we have a student. Okay. So with the student, I would say that students, when you think of a student, they're learning something. Okay, they haven't mastered it. They're learning about it. So, my original question was around Victoria's line of communication, and so what this suggests so far is that she's learning how to communicate in a way that these two will understand, but it isn't mastered as yet. Okay, it's not, that line of communication isn't mastered as yet, but she's learning. Okay, so she's learning about that. So let's have a look. Let's have a look at Mark the subcontractor and see what he's up to. Is he being deliberately difficult, or is it in how he feels spoken to? Okay, so we have the priest. So when something does impact him, and it does affect him, and he does feel it, he keeps quiet. He doesn't actually express what it is. The priest is alone. Okay, so the priest is an alone figure, but also is supposed to maintain the high ground, as in supposed to maintain that kind of space of a level of the high ground. So what he's doing is, in terms of the communication, he's not comfortable with, but rather than say he's not comfortable with it, he's keeping it to himself. Okay, so he's keeping that that scenario to himself. Okay, so rather than actually saying, well, what we need to do, or what I'm happy with, or what I can work with within what it is that you would like, Victoria, rather than say that, he's taking that, whatever that line of communication is, and then keeping it inside, rather than giving her any kind of feedback that she can work with. Okay, so rather than, he's not giving any feedback that she can work with, how she can work with him and interpret that. So let's have a look and see what the husband is up to. Okay, so we've got the Samaritan. So his way of looking at things is not, when we're looking at the Samaritan, he's trying to rescue the situation, trying to save it, trying to make it better. So in actual fact, how he then interacts with things, his words, his intentions are genuine, in that he's trying to help resolve it rather than cause any issues or problems. That his intention, even if Victoria doesn't feel that it shapes that way, that his intention is to try and rescue the situation, to solve it, to help solve it, because he feels, in terms of that rescuing, that student is active, as in how things are communicated in a way that these people feel comfortable with, doesn't quite come across. And so he's trying to be the kind of peacemaker as far as that's concerned. It's not done in a detrimental way. It's not done to harm, and certainly as far as Victoria is concerned, he's not saying it with an intention to be hurtful, from what we're looking at here. So Victoria's question is she on the right career path, or is this kind of all these things going a little bit pear-shaped? Is it an indication that maybe she should change things and take another route? So let's have a little look and see what we get. So my question is Victoria on the right career path for her at this moment? Oh, we've got a matching energy. Now, what I do is there's a huge pile of cards here, and I mix decks just to see if we get two things going on here. Just to see. And bearing in mind, there's a big old deck here, and I've pulled out 2 Samaritans. This energy is obviously really quite relevant at the moment. So what does Victoria need to address? Well, it's about her rescuer. Okay, her inner rescuer is the reason. So what she's needing to do is address the reasons why she's doing this. Why she has the career path that she has. Is it a passion? Or is it about rescuing something, resolving something, rescuing something as far as people are concerned? Because at the moment, that rescuing thing is not fulfilling. It's not fulfilling her. It doesn't feel like it's fulfilling a desire and a need that's going on inside of her. So interesting that her husband and Victoria have the same vibration going on as far as that Samaritan is concerned. So both have got best intentions. Okay, both have got best intentions around it all. So Victoria has the best intentions, her husband has the best intentions, but the communication isn't quite happening. So let's have a look, let's have a very brief look to see how that communication could be improved. What is the main focal point to have a look at so that the communication between all parties becomes more comfortable? Ah, interesting. So we have the Avenger. So what it's actually about is looking at, so both parties, so Victoria and her husband, will have an angry part that isn't being expressed. So it doesn't feel like it's being heard, it doesn't feel like it's being seen, and therefore she may well see it come out in other people, as in Mark, the subcontractor, as passive aggression. So Mark may well be showing Victoria a line of passive aggression, so not quite completing things, not quite doing things. Obviously he's now had some kind of accident where he couldn't fulfill it when he was 5 days off, all that kind of stuff. So there will be an undertone between Victoria and her husband of passive aggression. So it is very much about resolving communication differences. So communication differences as in, what is, when you're trying to express something, what is the real meaning behind it? And trying to find what that real meaning is. And allowing that to come to the fore first, viewing it if it's not appropriate to say it, and then reviewing it just to see how that is delivered. And if she's able to do that, she will find that the contractors will work better for her. Nothing here is telling her to go in another work related direction. It's not saying to go in a different direction. It's saying everything to do around communication. And in actual fact, communication more so with that love energy of the 4 between herself and her husband. Okay, so what can we learn from this situation? Well, sometimes it's not immediately obvious. Sometimes it's not immediately obvious where the particular issue is coming from. And sometimes it is the way in which we are communicating. Sometimes it's not that someone wants to be deliberately mean, but they don't understand how that communication is being, what that communication is, how you say it. So how do we begin to have a look at that? Well, it is about, you could say to a certain degree, it's about looking at our own inner voice. How does it communicate with us? Does it wait until it gets furious before it can really say something? Or can it kindly interpret early on to be able to then kindly interpret that into our external world, so that we then have a boundary with other people that they don't feel that they have to step over, but at the same time that the interaction is based on kindness rather than a stress. Okay, so before we go into the next dilemma, we have an important message from our sponsor, i.e. me, which means just for a moment your screen will go static whilst I clear the board and we move on to the next dilemma. Okay, so let's get into dilemma number 2 for today. So Sam is worried about her son and wants to create a more harmonious living arrangement at home. Okay, so we have Sam, who is a life code 5. Now, I'll have a look in a minute as to why she's got the tape over her mouth. Okay, and we also have her mother, who is a life code 7. And we have a son, who is a life code 110. So we'll discover in a moment why Sam is portrayed as someone who's having tape over her mouth rather than feeling that it feels comfortable in how she moves things forward. So what has she told us? Hi Heidi, I lived with my mother since before my father died. Ended up staying here with my son as it made sense. I feel my mother's quite intuitive but sweats the small stuff. My son recently had biomagnetic work done, found a huge trauma around him since birth, but he didn't want to work on reducing it. I feel they both have huge work to do, but neither are open to it, and I'm not sure I can help them. I feel family want me to stay here. So what's the problem the situation creates? Incredibly stressful to live here. I feel my space is cluttered and disorganized, no real personal space or privacy for relationships. I've done huge work to clear old energy this year, but others don't seem to want any change. I'm worried about my son living in this space and not releasing his trauma. I've looked at building a small house in the back garden, but I don't feel I can afford it. So what is the question that Sam wants to ask me? How do we live with excuse me, close to mother, all move forward and create our own sense of space, privacy for son and I to live our own lives? Okay, so Sam wants to know how to shift the energy at home in order to make living arrangements work better, especially for herself and her son. So what do we have? Well, we have a life code 5 and a life code 7 as mother and daughter. Okay, so as a life code 5, you can find that life code 5s like to be a little bit more direct. Okay, so quite often they like to be quite direct about things. Now with a life code 7, that's quite tricky because they become very emotional about that. Hence the reason why we've got Sam with tape over her mouth, feeling that she has to keep quiet, she has to put up and shut up rather than, find some even place. Because as that life code 7, a mother's most likely to go into kind of like a almost anxious hysteria. So Sam will be getting, as that life code 5, increasingly frustrated as far as that's concerned, and the mother will be becoming increasingly chaotic as that life code 7, because they can feel life code 7s can feel kind of the pressure of a life code 5. It can feel the pressure to change something, to feel that something's got to move forward and go into a place of release. So we also have here a life code 110. Now 110s are the only ones that are split between two areas. So what tends to happen is they can find themselves split between what are my obligations to the physical world and how do I feel about my whole self. And quite often, certainly early in life, you will see a 110 find themselves spread away from themselves as that 110 is the whole self. Why? Because they need to first establish themselves in the physical world to feel that they're part of it. So how that will translate in this dynamic, the son will feel that he's almost between these two women, okay, as in his grandmother and his mother. So he'll feel somewhere in between, but at the same time, he'll be too young in his own mind to have a clearer picture as to how that would be. So he would theoretically align with the anxiety, kind of want to keep things the same, of his grandmother. Okay, so let's have a little look and see where we're at. So let's see what this living situation is doing to Sam. Okay, then this isn't on conscious level. Let's have a look at how it's impacting her on a deeper level. Okay, so a deeper core level. Let's see how it's impacting her. Okay, so thinking of her, let's see. Okay, so we've got the advocate. So she's forever feeling that she's got to be the peacemaker, the one who kind of drives the peace of everything, keeps everything okay. And I suspect maybe she's really quite fed up with that. So we'll have a little look as we progress into this further. So what is the mother up to? Okay, so let's have a look. Does she know? Does she really know that this feels like quite a contained space for her daughter? Let's have a little look and see what she thinks of the whole scenario. We've got the Virgin. Okay, so she'd say, oh, I'm all sweet and innocent, nothing to do with me. Okay, so that will be how the mother sees it. So Sam's mother sees it as, I'm all sweet and innocent, nothing involves me. So quite often you see this when there's denial to be had, and especially as a life code 7, when there is denial, normally that denial is really quite big for a life code 7. Why? Because they don't want to feel anything that's slightly uncomfortable. So let's have a look and see what the whole situation does for the son. Okay. Poet. Okay, so what we have here is that he's kind of the thought, oh well, go with the flow, go with the flow, go with the flow, and kind of romanticizing the whole scenario. So yes, that will. I mean, they're kind of. It's sort of like a passive. I kind of want to call it a passive misery of this sort of. So the mother is all innocent. The son is romanticizes everything, and Sam is the peacemaker. Okay, so how can she define more of this? How can she define more of her own space? What are some of the things that she needs to communicate in order to be able to have some clarity as far as that's concerned? Well, let's have a look in the soul. Okay, so let's have a look and see what that's to do with. Because I suspect that her fear is that if she really kind of says anything about this, communicates this, all this kind of thing, that she worries it's going to impact her son, that somehow or another he's going to be upset by that. But let's have a little look and see what it is if we put that into the area of the 6, the soul. Okay, so thinking of Sam. Okay, so we've got the saboteur. So the big thing is, if she does address this, will feel like the living arrangements are sabotaged, that she won't be able to get through to her. She won't be able to get through this kind of thick wall, what's showing as a thick wall of denial as far as the mother is concerned. Okay, it will feel as though if she does communicate this, then it will come out either all wrong, or the mother will be such a thick wall of denial that she won't address anything. Okay, so that's not going to be very comfortable at all as far as Sam is concerned. So let's have a little look and see how she can some way get anywhere close to having a conversation with a mother where she can hear what she's saying. It's quite interesting because this is similar to dilemma number 1, but in a kind of different way. It's how can we be heard? How can I say something where this person gets me, where they can actually hear what I'm actually saying? So let's have a look without, how can I let this person hear without me having to be nasty, pretty much. So let's have a look and see what it is that Sam can do in order for a mother to begin to start to actually hear what she's saying. Okay. We've got this priest back again, as we did a little bit before. So it is actually a feeling of having to do that alone. But in this set of circumstance, it may well be literally a priest. Okay, a literal sense of a priest. So how does a priest solve something? Well, you could say it's about that authority, it's about that, maybe even say it's about confession, that kind of stuff. So maybe that's what it is that Sam would benefit from if she approached this with her mother, because a mother may well understand what the priest role is, but can't understand her own daughter. So if she said to her something along the lines of, I have something to confess, actually I feel that my space is restricted here and that feels really quite uncomfortable. Can I adjust something here with you, mother, because it's a little bit too much. I suspect then, if she's able to do that, then her mother will hear much more of what she's trying to say. So what can we learn from this situation? Well, sometimes it's all in the communication. And yes, when someone is a particular life code, yes, and how they interpret what you're trying to communicate can be really quite different from another person. So in this situation, this is about Sam coming to the space and looking out through a mother's eyes of what does a mother understand. And I suspect a mother understands what the priest is. Okay, so sometimes it's about looking, in order to solve an issue, to solve a problem, we have to look out through the other person's eyes and look out into their world. And not just look out into the world and think, oh, it's to look out into the world and think, well, how can I communicate with someone who looks out in this particular way? And as a sensitive, as an intuitive, you will find that a lot easier than the majority of people. So before we move on to the next dilemma, we have another important message from our sponsor, still me, and your screen will go static for just a moment and you will lose sound just for a moment whilst I clear the board. And then we'll move on to dilemma number 3. Okay, so we have dilemma number 3. So we have Pauline, who's a life code 9, who's finding that her daughter's attitude is highly antagonistic. So we have two people as far as this dilemma is concerned. We have Pauline, who is a life code 9, And we have her daughter, who is a life code 3. Okay, so we'll see in a moment why the daughter, as an example, is portrayed as a petulant teenager. Okay, so what has Pauline told us about this situation? I have a 24-year-old daughter living with me and her 6-year-old son. She has no respect for my home and sees it as her right to live here. With a small monetary contribution, no cooking, cleaning, etc., she's always being manipulating, sees herself as the victim, believes she's right all the time. Nobody can talk to her without her twisting and turning everything to the other person, leaving them distraught, upset and crying. So what's the problem the situation creates? A lot of tension in the house. There's more adult children living with me. Nobody wants to be around her. She has a very heavy negative energy. She takes no responsibility for herself or her attitude. Very seldom has she a nice word to say about anybody, or there's something wrong with everyone. It's very tiring. So what is the question that she wants me to have a look at? How can we raise our energy and maintain it? Her moving out is not feasible at the moment. Okay. So we have a situation where Pauline wants to know how to adjust the family dynamics to create a more peaceful home. So we have the two life codes. We have a 9 and a 3. So a 9, anyway, kind of lives out or finds themselves on the receiving end of everyone else's projections. And they have to kind of interpret that, and quite often they get the blame for things. So her daughter, as that life code 3, will be in that blame mode. Okay, so she'll be blaming her mother for all kinds of stuff. As a life code 3, life code 3s can swing one of two ways. Life code 3s are either very wise, very steady kind of people who can interpret a wisdom. Okay, why? Because it's the female frequency and vibration. They can really interpret a wisdom. They can be patient, because all of this side is a 3 and a 5 and 8. They're very patient. Or the flip side can be that they procrastinate, they whine a lot, and they won't take any responsibility for themselves because they want to feel dependent. Okay, so the female energy sometimes wants to actually feel dependent and helpless. So I suspect in this dynamic that this is really what's going on with the daughter. I suspect as well that there is something to do with aloneness or loneliness, and in order to, rather than access that within herself, she has to make everybody else out to be the bad guy. And so it kind of reaffirms a level of aloneness and loneliness. So let's have a look as far as Pauline is concerned, as far as this situation is. Okay. Oh, and I also suspect, just before we have a look at that, I also suspect that the daughter will be utilizing her son as, and we don't have the son on here, but we will be utilizing her son as that tool for the manipulation, which is, well, you can't kick me out because where's my son going to go? So she is utilizing this helplessness in order to stem off a feeling of aloneness. Okay, but doesn't want to own it, so therefore is aggro to everybody else. So let's have a look and see what happens as far as Pauline is concerned. Okay, so we have gossip. So Pauline is feeling that her daughter kind of incites a lot of gossip. That there are secret conversations, there are having to be, how do I sort this, how do I solve this? So Pauline will be feeling that there's this kind of feel that there always has to be these secret conversations around the daughter, and I suspect because she then thinks, well, if I have these conversations with her, she then blows her top and becomes completely unreasonable. So let's have a look and see what the daughter is up to. Oh, I've got two actually that came out. We have the Midas Miser and the Engineer. Okay, so I'm going to put both of these on here because they both came out kind of at the same time. So they will be a meaning. Okay, so the daughter can switch significantly between being sweetness and light sometimes and really very difficult at other times. Oh, and we have the engineer as well, which I will retrieve in a second. We have the engineer who, stick that on there. We have the engineer with that Midas miser, so she knows fully what she's doing. So she does actually access the manipulation, and it's not all innocent. It is some. She knows that works, and so therefore I strongly suspect that she's utilizing and using her son as that method of manipulation. So is the daughter lonely? Is it really the undertone thing, the underlying situation here? Is it about loneliness and feeling lonely as to the reason why she does this, and she doesn't want to own that feeling? So this is why she behaves in the way she does. So let's have a little look and see whether we're right about that. Okay. So we've got the hero stroke heroine. So the question was, kind of a literal interpretation. Is that or isn't it? I would say yes, but at the same time, how does she hide it? She hides it by being well, I'm the one that's important. I'm the one that knows it. I'm the one that knows it all. I'm the one who can solve these things. Everyone else is useless. That will be how she communicates that. So yes, she's a solid kind of wall of no go kind of situation. So she doesn't want to hear anything. So how can Pauline kind of solve this? Because what will be quite clear is, especially as a life code 9, the gossip part, where she's always having to discuss it and talk about it, and this daughter to be the centre of everyone's world, it's kind of, she'll be feeling, oh gosh, this is exhausting, it's tiring, I don't want to have to do it, but I just can't get anywhere as far as that's concerned. So again, let's have a little look in the soul and see if there's anything that she can do as far as that's concerned. Let's have a little look. Okay, so we have the hedonist. So this is quite interesting. What she's going to have to do, Pauline's going to have to do, is actually indulge some of her frustrations. She's actually going to have to be quite clear with her daughter and start actually indulging completely as far as her situation is concerned. And I think if she then indulges within this and indulges and says, look, this actual line of behaviour is not acceptable, the pulling people apart, being unkind, being unnecessary, doing this and being that, is not okay. You're living in this environment, and there has to be a boundary to that. I understand that you're on your own. I understand that you've got a young child, and you're having to cope with all of that, and that you're having to cope with that. And I suspect alone, because she feels very alone. I get that, but you cannot behave in this way, because it's not acceptable. And then, rather than kind of give her the reasons why it's unacceptable, just say, look, it's not acceptable. Rather than give her a whole bunch of reasons to hang off and go, well, it's not me, it's you, which she would do with all this lot, because she's well aware of her ability to manipulate. It's just to say, look, it's not acceptable. But don't give any kind of indications as to what it is. If she indulges that, then I suspect that the daughter will pipe down and calm down, probably sulk for a fair bit, but she may even use that, we'll just have to move out then. And rather than indulge an argument as far as that's concerned and say, well, you know that you can't because you're this and you're not in a position to, is to say, well, if that's what you feel you need to do, then maybe that's what you feel you need to do. But I'm not asking you to do that. I'm asking you to behave better in this household. So if you feel you can't and you feel that that's what you have to do, then I accept that's what you have to do. But that's not what I'm asking you to do. So if she's able to do that, then the daughter won't be able to use her 6-year-old child as the manipulation tool. And then Pauline starts to have some kind of boundary with her daughter and that feeling as far as that's concerned. So if that happens, let's just have a quick look to see how Pauline would fare if she's able to do that and indulge that. Okay. I suspect that Pauline feels a whole bunch of guilt about something or other as far as the daughter is concerned, which is why she's got away with things for a long time. Feels like she's got away with things for a long time. Let's see. So we have the mystic. So if she is able to solve that, looking at it in that way, and I suspect in hearing this, because obviously all these dilemmas are real people, you know, they're not made up, these are real people who have sent, and I'm using their exact words, they fill in a form using the exact words that they're asking about. So I suspect that in Pauline hearing this will feel, because the mystic gives that as an indication, she'll say, actually, yeah, that kind of feels right. I think I might be able to do that. And it will be then setting a boundary, but without the daughter feeling threatened, because actually this is a very insecure young woman who can't express that she feels that. So she's exercising that in unsavory character traits. Okay, so if she then defines this and indulges herself in terms of setting that limit, then she will find, I suspect, that the daughter will start to be a fairly decent human being. So what can we learn from these situations? Well, quite often on the surface, you know, sometimes someone's behaviour is genuinely really bad, and they know this. You know, as this girl knows, she knows that her behaviour is bad. But then, when we look a little deeper, we can quite often see that someone's bad behaviour is fueled by some kind of connection to aloneness. And that happens a lot of the time. So when we can own our own boundary around aloneness, it then makes it easier for us to be able to handle other people, especially when they show difficult behaviour towards us. So that's the end of this episode of the Sensitive Mind Show. If you've enjoyed it and you found it helpful, do share it with your friends, and be sure to join me next week, where I look forward to giving you an alternative perspective on your relationship dilemmas. Bye for now, and let me leave you with this.